8:38, back here on the Big Boy Radio Show. Listening to Florida Sports Talk, powered by NBC Sports. You can listen live online at floridasportstalk.fm. Remember our Facebook page, facebook.com/Florida Sports Talk. Simple. Let's talk a little Miami Hurricane football. Our good friend Danny Money of CanesInSight.com, our guest, as he is each and every Thursday here on the show. Danny, good morning. How are you, my man?
Doing awesome. How you guys?
Doing quite well. I was doing much better at about 6:30 this morning as I was on CanesInSight.com and learned that Gabe Terry might be back on the team. Explain to me if, in fact, that's true, and if so, what has happened for him to allow him the possibility of being back on the squad?
Well, he made a Twitter post kind of hinting at that, and that's really what everybody's going off of. I haven't heard that he'd be back. Honestly, I'd be quite surprised if he was back. Coach Golden was pretty clear that he's no longer with the team, not just because of the incident with him being caught with a few bags of marijuana, but really kind of lead up to that. He'd had a couple run-ins, and then this was just sort of the one that really put him over the top. So I'd be surprised if he was still on the team, but certainly that would be a boost to the linebacking core. He's a great athlete, and he plays very hard. So it was tough to lose him, but we'll see.
You know, I think it's kind of hit or miss from summertime to summertime in terms of guys getting in trouble. And you mentioned a kid that was kicked off there. How would you rate, obviously people feel good about the progression of the program, but how would you rate the job that Coach Golden's done in terms of discipline, of bringing in maybe the right types of players? You haven't heard a whole lot about Miami guys getting in trouble the last couple years. In general, what has he done differently, and how has he maybe been able to avoid some of those nasty headlines that you see in the offseason so many times?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's done a good job. And like you said, it's on the front end a lot of it, which is the people he's bringing in. The guys that have gotten into trouble for the most part have been in that first class that he brought in, which he really cobbled together very fast. He came in December, so he didn't really have the time to do his full due diligence on these kids and really inspect them. He was just trying to sign as many talented players as he could in the short time that he had. So a few of those guys, Johnny Paul, Eddie Johnson, Thomas Finney, no longer with the program. But if you look at the last class and the kids that he inherited, he's really done a good job. Sean Trell Henderson, I think, is the shining example of a guy who constantly had discipline problems and is really turned a new leaf. Seems to be on his way to fulfilling at least some of his potential, getting to the National Football League, staying in shape. So there's been a few guys who maybe could have gone either way, that he's disciplined, that he's stuck with. He didn't just kick them off and worked with them, and they've ended up in a better place. So I think people are happy with the way that Coach Golden has handled the discipline side of the team.
Danny Money, CanesInsight.com, our guest here on the Big Boy Radio Show. Danny, let me turn it to recruiting. As far as for the next year's class, I mean, whenever you get a quarterback to commit, it's always big news, and Miami did get one from a California kid in the past week or so.
Yeah, I know Brad Kai is a guy that you're excited about, that I'm excited about. Not many people know him nationally. He's starting to develop a little buzz on the West Coast, and basically he's 6'3", 6'4", good build, pocket passer, comes from a good program in Chaminade. He actually transferred over to Chaminade. He was stuck behind an upperclassman D1 quarterback, so he wasn't getting enough playing time early in his career. So transferred to Chaminade and spent a lot of last year handing off to Chaminade's four-star running back, who ended up going to the University of Nebraska. So that kind of limited his hype a little bit. But once his highlight video started getting out, people started asking, who is this guy? Just because the accuracy of his throws, his size. He seems to really read the defense well, had a lot of protection, but you see him going to his second, third progression, which is rare for a high school kid. And then in the 7-on-7 circuit's really done a good job of throwing the football. So he's a guy that's getting a lot of buzz. Reminds Miami of a couple of the more cerebral quarterbacks they've had in the past. Dorsey, Steve Walsh. This guy might even be a little more physical than those guys. Strong guy, pretty strong arm. So Miami fans really excited to have that kind of quarterback in the mix, and really happy with James Coley for going and finding him and being the first to offer.
It's interesting because Miami has built their program, built their success on putting a wall around those three counties down there in South Florida, really recruiting the majority of their team from that area. But traditionally, you look at all the great quarterbacks that have come through there. We're talking about guys, Steve Walsh from Minnesota, California guys, Toretta, the Testaverdes from other places. Why has Miami really look to go outside of the area in bringing in quarterbacks? And do you feel that there's maybe a dearth of talent at the quarterback position in South Florida, or is that maybe a situation where the best players down there are playing other positions rather than playing the quarterback spot from a younger age?
Well, that's how it always has been. Brian Griese, probably the most famous quarterback to come out of Miami-Dade. Craig Erickson, I think the only quarterback from the South Florida area to end up at Miami, or at least from the Florida area, and be productive and be kind of a UN type quarterback. Now, what's interesting is that the tide has kind of turned lately, and teams down here are starting to throw more. And Miami's gone from a place that never produced quarterbacks to really becoming a quarterback hub. For example, a lot of people felt the best quarterback in college football last year was Geno Smith from Miramar High School, which is just a couple of minutes from where Miami plays their games. Shoelace, Bernard Robinson, obviously a star of college football. And then this year, you look at the top quarterback rankings for next year, right on top, you're going to see Teddy Bridgewater, who obviously I know very well up in Gainesville, at Louisville. He's from Miami Northwestern. And then Stephen Morris for the Miami Hurricanes, starting to develop some buzz as an NFL prospect from the city of Miami. So the tide has kind of turned, and more quarterbacks are coming out of Miami. So on one hand, Miami Hurricanes fans are saying, let's go to California, let's go elsewhere because that's where we've had success in the past. However, there's another faction that says there's a trend coming with Miami quarterbacks, South Florida quarterbacks. Maybe we should jump on that. So at the moment, there's a California quarterback committed and a Miami quarterback committed, Alan Edwards. So we'll see where that goes.
You mentioned that, and I wanted to bring that up. Is Alan Edwards a guy that some people believe will or will not decommit? What's your sense on him as far as his commitment level to the University of Miami, knowing now that they've brought in a second quarterback?
My feel is that he will end up at Louisville. I know that Coach Coley really likes Malik Rozier, who's a mobile quarterback from Mobile, Alabama. Not a running quarterback, but a guy that likes to scramble, likes to throw on the run. Coach Coley really likes him, likes his mental makeup, very smart guy, baseball player, strong arm. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Malik Rozier end up in this class when he comes visit in early June, and then Edward end up at a place like Louisville.
Danny Money, CanesInsight.com, our guest here on the Big Boy Radio Show. Danny, let me ask you about the stadium situation. Obviously down there in Miami, they were talking about doing some renovations, getting stuff done, and then somehow, some way, through some sort of legislation, it gets shut down. How does all that stuff there at Sun Life Stadium, how does that affect the University of Miami, if at all?
Well, they're kind of bystanders to it. Obviously, they supported the renovation, but it wasn't really necessarily their fight. They weren't putting a ton of money into that fight. They would have liked to have had the renovations, something that would have helped them. It's funny. A lot of these college kids, obviously some of them like to play in the college atmosphere with the full stadium, but a lot of them get impressed with perks like locker rooms and those kind of amenities. So if Miami would have had first-class NFL amenities, that would have helped in recruiting. But, it's not going to make or break them. I don't think it's a huge concern with the fan base or the coaching staff, but obviously it's a little disappointing.
Danny Money, CanesInsight.com here. One final question for you, Danny, before we let you go. A guy I know that you're excited about as far as a recruit that was sort of a late addition to Al Golden's last recruiting class. Derrick Griffin is a kid that can play basketball, can play football as well. Apparently some good news on his front that essentially the only thing that's keeping him now from enrolling at Miami is an exit exam from the state of Texas. The thoughts on him, does he look like a guy that's going to be at the University of Miami sooner rather than later?
We've been going back, a couple of months ago. I've always heard that the chances with him were better than people thought. Miami's done a good job of getting their kids qualified in the last few years. They've had maybe, 4 kids out of almost 50-something that they haven't qualified. Most of them have gotten in. So they've done a really good job of working with these kids, working with their advisors, making sure they do the things they need to do to qualify. So the word on Derrick Griffin, yes, that he's passed his test. His core GPA is up to par. Now it's just a matter of taking his Texas exit test. And there's actually some rumors that he's already passed that. I mean, no one's gotten the full, straight word from him. And one of my rules of thumb, just following this stuff for way too many years, is that you never take what you hear about grades as gospel, because there always seems to be some misinformation in terms of grades. And just because of privacy laws, there's a limit on who actually knows what's going on with the grades. And obviously, you could have the grades, you could have the test, you could have the core GPA, and then still get flagged once you get to campus by the NCAA clearinghouse. I've seen kids that were actually practicing with Miami drafted him and pulled him off the practice field and never ended up playing for the University of Miami just because they had their scores flagged. So that's always kind of a weird situation to speculate on. But if they were to get Derrick Griffin into the class, some people consider him the best athlete in the entire South, just because the fact that he's a top 100 prospect in basketball, top 25, 30 prospect in football. He could really help this team right away.
Danny Money, CanesInsight.com, the best in the business talking University of Miami football. As always, Danny, appreciate your time, my friend, and we look forward to talking to you next week.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it. Danny Money, CanesInsight.com. Check out the website. I got all kinds of stuff on there that you'll enjoy, from information on the football team to the recruiting side as well. You'll like all of it. I check it out each and every day myself. Coming up on the other side of the break, a little Wednesday, Thursday, Friday fun facts for you. Coming up next, you're listening to the Big Boy Radio Show right here on Florida Sports Talk, powered by NBC Sports. Listen live online all the time at floridasportstalk.fm.